All right, well, welcome this morning to El Paso Bible Church in our Sunday School hour. We're going to be mostly in Exodus chapter 25 this morning as we're looking at this transition period from the people of Israel, the Hebrew nation, being slaves in Egypt and being transitioned into the land that they were promised centuries before. And so we've been talking about that various and sundry laws that God gave the people. Certainly the laws were given in a form that was relevant to them while they were in this transition nomadic state and until they took their land and possessed it. But they're in process, right? And so at the end of chapter 24, if you're there in your Bible, Moses is told by God, by Yahweh, to bring the elders and the people into approach, but only Moses is to go up close to him. And so they do that. They go up on the mountain. The glory of the Lord rests on Mount Sinai. The cloud covers it for 6 days. And on the seventh day, he calls Moses up. And so Israel is seeing the presence of Yahweh on the mountain, seeing what the indication that there's no one else up there but him and Moses, because that's not tolerable for any other living thing that God has not permitted. And so it's like a consuming fire on the mountaintop. And Moses enters up into that, and he was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, it says in the last verse of chapter 24. 40 days and 40 nights he spent up on the mountain, which has, there's some significance to those numbers. Of course, that was how long Jesus was in the wilderness during that temptation period there that we read about in the Gospels. 40 years, 40 days, it's supposed to be a significant amount of time, a large amount of time, not necessarily a normal jaunt up the mountain. But here we are in chapter 25, and so this is a conversation, and we need to not forget what's taking place. The elders of Israel are supposed to be still visible to the people. They're down at the base of the mountain. Not only were they scared, they were disallowed, so it worked out well. It's like on those sitcoms, right? Well, I quit. Well, you can't quit, you're fired. It's a mutual agreement, right? The Israelites can't come up any closer. The elders can't come any closer, that's fine. They can visualize what's taking place. But the material that's given in this chapter is pretty detailed, and it's only given to one man. It gets given to Moses. So then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the sons of Israel to raise a contribution for me." Take up an offering, essentially. "From every man whose heart moves him, you shall raise my contribution." So he says that you're supposed to go among the people, and everybody who wants to take part in this offering is supposed to do that. And so we have a fairly negative view of giving in the Old Testament. A lot of times people say, "Well, we don't give like they gave." It was basically a tax in the Old Testament, and there were some taxes that were paid, but there is a division that needs to be drawn here, and that is that humans collect taxes, generally speaking. So you do have a portion in the Old Testament of things that are called a tithe that were given to people, primarily the Levitical priesthood and the Levites, that were also not given any land. They were given no farms. They were given no inheritance in the land, meaning they were not given an income-producing job to do in the land, and they were deprived of producing for themselves. And so they did have to be supported in the work that they did. And so those went to humans, right? But generally speaking, the most important things, like building a tabernacle or a sanctuary for Yahweh, is given as a free offering. So he's supposed to go to all of the people and say, "Look, this is the system. These are the things we need, and you are responsible as your heart moves to raise these things, because this is what we need." But remember, this is a conversation that Moses is having with Yahweh directly up on the mountain. This is the contribution which you are to raise from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue material of some sort, purple and scarlet material, fine linen, goat hair, ram skins, dyed red, porpoise skins, acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and setting stones for the ephod and for the breastpiece. All right, so you all ready? We're going to take up a contribution this morning. I need somebody to volunteer to bring in the ram skins, dyed red. The porpoise skins, who's going to take up the porpoise skins? Nobody? Okay. It just sounded kind of odd to me that they're going to just go, oh, hold on, let me go in the back. I'll pull out those porpoise skins that I have. But they use these items, right? The goat hair was a common thing that they would have used for weaving. You probably also don't have a loom sitting on your back porch or a spinning wheel, but they would have had these things. They also gained some of these from the nation of Egypt. Remember that as they went out, that they didn't go out empty-handed. God said, you're going to go forth essentially wealthy for all of the labor that you've put in to the nation of Egypt and were uncompensated for. You're going to go out and it's going to provide sustenance and wealth for you as you go into the land that you've been promised. So go and ask for this contribution. I want these things that are not, these are not poor items to be asked for. Occasionally this happens in church ministry. You'll find that people have things that ought to be taken to savers, and instead of taking it to savers, they bring it to church. Please don't do that. Take it to savers, generally speaking. If there's specific items that people ask for, then that's one thing. But targeted things. But these were valuable items. We could go into detail about what it requires. Obviously, gold, silver, and bronze take some mining and some extraction. I told you that Priscilla and I visited a hard rock gold mine up in Colorado this last summer, and we went down, and they give you a little chunk of ore that has a little minuscule amount of gold in it. And I asked the guy, I was like, well, so what temperature do you have to fire this to bring the gold out of the ore? It's about 2,000 degrees. And everybody went, oh, 2,000 degrees. And of course, Simeon and I built a forge in the back that we can actually do that. He said, oh, that's just one step in the process. But it's not, a gold extraction is not something that everybody can do in their backyard, right? Even if you can get enough ore to do it. Silver the same way. Bronze is an alloy. You need to know something about metallurgy in order to make it. Blue, purple, and scarlet material were things that they would have traded for. Dyes, fine linen, textile, and goat hair. You're going to see what they use the goat hair for here in a minute. They needed a lot of goat hair. A lot of goat hair. Ram skins, porpoise skins, leather of various types, acacia wood. They're going to need a lot of that. Oil for lighting, and spices for the anointing oil for the fragrant incense. So they had all these things. It was reasonable that they would go and ask for them. It says this is for this purpose. It's not just to create a storehouse of wealth that you're supposed to now utilize. These are construction materials. It says, let them, in verse 8, let them construct a sanctuary, a holy place for me, that I may dwell among them. The word dwell, you probably understand, is a permanent living quarter. Take a permanent residence with something. There's a distinction, right? If you sojourn somewhere, right? The Israelites were said to sojourn in Egypt. How long were they in Egypt? 400 years, 430 years, it references one time, centuries. But they were just sojourners in Egypt. That wasn't their land. They didn't have title to that place. It belonged to another nation. It wasn't a matter of time. It was a matter of intent, right? Establishing an inheritance and a heritage in a place. And these people are nomadic, right? We talked, how long did it take for Joshua? So we haven't gotten into all the complications, right? But when Joshua enters the land and he stands before the people and he says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Y'all do what you want, but we're going to do this. And they all say, yes, we're going to do what you're going to do. We're going to follow you, and we go and take the land. I'm paraphrasing, right? I'm not translating. How long did it take from that point forward to do everything that they could do? We talked about that. 7 years, right? They're still nomadic. They're still in transit, transient people moving around, conquering their own land. So if you're going to make a dwelling place among a transient people that is largely nomadic at this point, you have to make a nomadic dwelling, right? It's going to have to be something that's movable. And we find that that's what it is. According to all that I'm going to show you as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, just so you shall construct it. So remember, there's one person on the mountain, Moses, and he's going to be receiving all of these directions on how to build things exactly to order. I don't know how many of you have ever had to do that. I grew up doing this as a matter of course. People would bring in, and my dad did it largely, I had a participation in it. They would bring in a chair, and some of them came out of Irish castles that were a millennium old. And they would bring in a chair and they say, this chair is 1,000 years old. We don't want to sit in it, but can you make us one like this chair? Have you ever tried doing something like that? It's very, very difficult to do something like that. It's even a simple chair or a simple piece of furniture, to make it exactly according to order, to make it perfect according to detailed instructions is a very difficult task. And remember, they don't have a pen and paper, they don't have a CAD program, they don't have SketchUp, they don't have any of those things. But Moses is being told, you're going to make this thing exactly according to the pattern that I give you, and you're going to construct it that way. So, not surprisingly, they're building a sanctuary, a set-apart place, a holy place. You'll run into some places. When I was a kid, all of the mostly sweet older ladies in the church would tell you not to run in God's house when you were in church. They would also tell you to wipe your feet before you entered the Lord's house, because it was a sanctuary. When I got a little bit older, they still told us not to run and to wipe our feet, but they didn't give that rationale. Who was more correct? The second people, right? Some people get wound around the axle, right, by calling this room a sanctuary, right? Because God doesn't dwell here, right? That's not where he lives. Y'all understand that, right? When we light a candle, that's not the Shekinah glory, right? That's just a candle. God doesn't dwell in this room. He doesn't dwell in this building. It's also why I have a little bit of a problem that when everybody starts a building program, they go and teach through Ezra and Nehemiah, which is about building God's actual house, right? That's not about your average building program for just a building. We even call them multi-purpose rooms. Can a sanctuary be called a multi-purpose building? What is a sanctuary there for? One purpose: for God to dwell among his people, as we understand this, right? So God is saying, this is going to be my house. And we're going to start with the innermost things, the things that are in the holiest part of this sanctuary. And that's what he does. He doesn't start with the footprint. That's what we start with, right? We start with, how big does the concrete need to be? What dimension? Where do the beams need to be? Where does all the plumbing need to be? We start with that. Actually, God starts with the furniture in the holiest of holies. I used to get a little bit irritated with my mom, because my dad always designed, he wanted to always build a house. He never got to do it. But even when I was building the house that Priscilla and I were building, my mom wanted to jump ahead to the paint on the walls. I said, well, Mom, we got cedar to clear and concrete to pour and PEX to put down, drain lines, a septic tank. We got to choose paint colors right now. I thought that was a strange thing. But God starts with the furnishings. He starts with this. Verse 10, they shall construct an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long. This is, you know what a cubit is. It's roughly 18 inches. But you better decide whose cubit you're going to use. Even today we have this problem. You can take 10 tape measures from Lowe's, and as a cabinet maker, it's nearly a sin, but you can stick that tape measure out and you can look, and some of the inches are missing a 32nd or a 16th. They're just missing. They don't measure the same length from the very beginning. Well, it may not matter much for what most people do with a tape measure, but if you mess up a 32nd or a 16th on the way a cabinet door fits, that's substantial. But they had a standard of a cubit. You're going to make it 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide and 1.5 cubits high. So 18 inches high, 18 inches wide, 2.5 cubits long. What is that? 4.5 feet roughly. I don't know about you, but that seems kind of small for the Ark of the Covenant. When you're watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, right, back in the day, my kids have watched this because there's no movies comparable to Harrison Ford back in the day, right? When he's looking for the Ark of the Covenant, right, what do you think he's looking for? This massive, huge thing. It's not really that big. Go ahead and make it according to these measurements. And you're going to overlay it with pure gold. Inside and out you shall overlay it. And you'll make a gold molding around it. One of the reasons it couldn't be too big is they were supposed to carry this thing. That's why when you see an actual pirate's treasure chest, they're actually small. They're like, this big. It was going to be extremely heavy if you put actual gold around it, and they were supposed to do that. You shall cast 4 gold rings for it and fasten them on its 4 feet. 2 rings shall be on one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. You shall make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. You shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark with them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it. Well, they're supposed to constantly be present. They were a part of the ark. And it was supposed to be able to be picked up and moved as needed. And the whole thing is supposed to be overlaid with gold. The contents are important. Shall put into the ark of the testimony, which I shall give you. Shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. What's a cherub? I ask this question because my mom likes to decorate with things she calls cherubs. We have some people in El Paso Bible Church who like to decorate with cherubs. Where's Denise? She's got some in her office. Just showed up one day. Does God say what the cherub looks like? Does it look like a little fat baby at the Hallmark store? That's what the American cherub looks like. I say that because he didn't have to tell Moses what the cherubim looked like. Isn't that unique? I have to tell you, as an American Christian, that a cherub is not a little fat baby. I don't think they had to tell Moses what an angel looked like. I think there was a much more accurate representation. Supposed to put 2 of these. Should make the cherubim of one piece with the mercy seat at its 2 ends. So this is actually pretty significant casting. We're used to a world in which we can 3D print some very substantial detail. You do not have to be a very smart person. You do not have to have a whole lot of craftsmanship ability. to be able to push a button on a computer that's connected to a 3D printer and make a mold that can get the very wrinkles under my eyes accurate and print out a plastic copy of that. Back when I first started into developing an interest into firearms manufacture, there were people in their backyards who would take an AR-15 receiver and cast it out of beer cans. I don't know if you have seen an AR, my boys have seen an AR-15 receiver over and over and over. It is remarkable to be able to use a little bit of sand and an oil burner in your backyard and take some Bud Light cans and make a usable AR-15 receiver out of it. That's the difference, right? Moses is saying you're going to have to find some significant craftsmen, some people that are able to do stuff. He did not say, y'all make the box and I'll snap my fingers and put the gold pieces on the top to decorate it. You're going to need to be able to develop this yourself. A double cherub with the mercy seat on the two ends. The cherubim shall have their wings spread upward, covering the mercy seat with their wings and facing one another. The faces of the cherubim are to be turned towards the mercy seat. And you shall put the mercy seat on the top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony which I will give to you. There I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are upon the ark of the testimony, I will speak to you about all that I will give you in commandment for the sons of Israel. Because before we get to the tent, before we get to the paint colors, before we get to any of that, we're going to talk about the item that is going to be the meeting place between you and me. That's the important thing. That's the priority that you need to understand. This is where we're going to have our conversations from now on. I'm going to start with the furnishings, the Ark of the Covenant. By the way, anybody know where it is? Anybody's been spending all this time looking for it. If Indiana Jones couldn't find it, I'm not sure that you'll be able to, right? One thing I did think they got right, what movie was it that they were looking for the chalice? The Last Crusade was the one? Yeah. I actually think that they got that one kind of right. Would they find out like a wooden cup? Yeah. I think that that's right. Years ago, my dad and I participated in a very historic restoration of the 100-year chapel in San Antonio for the Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word. We took many of the old furnishings and refurbished them, and then they sold them essentially to raise funds for the chapel restoration. And as part of that, we got a tour. One of the older Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word. It was interesting doing this as a bunch of Protestant rebels that we were. We went and we got to tour the chapel, and one of the ladies said, well, you know, compared to whatever, I've been to the Vatican and this is so much more humble, and I've been to the Vatican, and this was Sisters of Charity of the Incarnate Word. He said, you know, it's really inappropriate. The level of wealth that is just there in the furnishings. It's just, I was like, oh my goodness, does the Pope know you're going around saying this? I just couldn't believe, I never heard that come out of my dad's family was all Catholic, so it wasn't that I wasn't around it. I just, usually the kind of a party line going through there. But it should be, this sanctuary, right, should be significant. Should be done according to these directions, right? This isn't inappropriate, this is proper. It's according to God's directions. You shall make a table of acacia wood, 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide, 1.5 cubits high. You shall overlay it with pure gold and a gold border around it. You shall make for it a rim of a handbreadth around it, and you shall make a gold border for the rim around it. You shall make 4 gold rings for it and put rings on it, which are on its 4 feet. The rings shall be close to the rim as holders for the poles to carry the table. You shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, so that with them the table may be carried. You shall make its dishes and its pans and its jars and its bowls with which to pour drink offerings. You shall make them of pure gold. You shall set the bread of the presence on the table before me at all times. So all this is supposed to be portable. Different eras have different standards of portability. I have a stick welder from 1947 sitting in my garage. It is portable, right, boys? It's portable. It weighs about 600 pounds and has lift points on it. You have to lift it. All of this gold, even gold overlay, is going to be heavy, but they've made it to be portable by at least 4 people. There's no Acacia furniture here. Anyway, when El Paso, remember when El Paso, we thought we were going to get an Ikea or something over here at West Town Marketplace? There was a rumor that Ikea was going to come. I was like, that's just what we need, more furniture in a box. But that's just my prejudices growing up, having built furniture that didn't go in a box. These are important. These are going right in the sanctuary, right? Then you should make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand and its base and its shaft are to be made of hammered work. Its cups, its bulbs, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. 6 branches shall go out from its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand from its one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand from the other side. 3 cups shall be shaped like almond blossoms in the one branch. So you guys, right now, I just want you to go take a piece of chalk. This is what dentists used to do to make tooth molds for repairing teeth. And other people would do that. I want you to take a piece of chalk, and I want you to replicate an almond blossom so we can make one. Could you do that? Do you know what an almond blossom even looks like? No. None of you have been to California during pollination season, I guess. Just remarkable that he could say, just make an almond blossom. Go ahead, just make one. We need one. He doesn't say it's easy, but he just said make one like that in the one branch, a bulb and a flower, and 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the other branch, a bulb and a flower. So for 6 branches going out from the lampstand, and in the lampstand 4 cups shaped like almond blossoms, its bulbs and its flowers. A bulb shall be under the first pair of branches coming out of it, and a bulb under the second pair of branches coming out of it, and a bulb under the third pair of branches coming out of it for the 6 branches coming out of the lampstand. I know that these instructions get a little bit hard to go through, guys. But remember that these are actual building instructions that they're being given. Manufacturing instructions, and to me they're actually kind of sparse. Not sure that any of us here or anybody that I know could replicate what's being said here simply from these verbal instructions. It's really remarkable that they came out with something that was acceptable. The bulbs and their branches shall be of one piece with it. All of it shall be one piece of hammered work of pure gold. Then you shall make its lamps 7 in number. You'll see these around, by the way. We have today is, if I understand it correctly, today is the first day of Hanukkah. And we have, here in El Paso, have a substantial Jewish population. And so you see more here than you see some other places. This is the menorah that they use and form. And this is where it comes from. They shall mount its lamp so as to shed light on the space in front of it. Its snuffers. Any of y'all altar boys that carried snuffers? You know what a snuffer is? Scott knows what a snuffer is. All right. My dad was an altar boy long ago, and he used a snuffer to go around and turn off, turn off to snuff the candles. Trays shall be of pure gold. It shall be made from a talent of pure gold with all these utensils. A talent, the word is actually loaf. It's a loaf of gold. That's what that means. And it had a general weight, but it was, not that much gold, actually. We think of gold bricks, gold bars. They manufactured their gold bullion, is what we would call it, into a loaf shape, looked like a loaf of bread, a little round disc. So see that you make them after the pattern for them, which was shown to you on the mountain. So he's telling Moses. Moses is not the craftsman. He's the guy getting the directions. There's a lot of potential for some frustration in that. My dad was an artist. He could sit there at Bill Miller's with a customer, drink sweet tea, and talk to them and say, okay, so what did you want again? And he would take his little pencil from behind his ear and he would draw out on the napkin. And he'd say, so do you want that like that? No? Okay, give me another napkin. And he'd draw out exactly what they want. He would draw out a whole, 18-piece buffet and dining set on a napkin while eating a taco and drinking tea at Bill Miller's. And when he got done, he would build them exactly what they wanted, and they would gladly pay him whatever he asked for that. Now, I am not an artist. I would never dare to go in with a napkin and a pencil, pick up some breakfast tacos and drink the tea, and talk to the customer and draw out my stick figure-y kind of drawing and try to give that to my dad and say, here, Dad, here's an 18-piece dining set with buffet. Can you go ahead and make that from my drawing? That would be foolish. I wouldn't be able to do it. He's not the craftsman. Well, there's a third party involved here, and I don't know how they succeeded doing it, actually, unless, it's a supernatural process, right? God is giving them directions to make their own tabernacle. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle, verse 1 of chapter 26. That's where we are. With 10 curtains of fine twisted linen and blue and purple and scarlet material. You shall make them with cherubim, the work of a skillful workman. That's the first reference to a skillful workman we see. By the way, a few years ago, Cielo Vista had a full-size a tabernacle that you could go and tour in their parking lot. We tried to go, but the wind were too high or something. We couldn't go. We just saw the outside of it. It was pretty remarkable. You shall make the 10 curtains of fine twisted linen. So somebody's going to have to take the flax, that's what linen is made from, if I remember correctly, which is essentially a type of grass. They're going to take that and they're going to make a cloth out of it. They're going to spin it and make the cloth. They're going to dye the cloth. And they're going to produce enough for these 10 curtains. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits. My daughter recently went to Hobby Lobby. My daughter crochets. And she bought what seemed to be what my sons would call a ton, something ton, I won't say what of yarn. All the yarn that Hobby Lobby had in this one color, I think. Wasn't it, Grace? It was all the yarn. How much yarn was it, Grace? She doesn't know. All the yarn, all of it that Hobby Lobby had, because she wanted to make a blanket, crochet a blanket. I don't even want to know how much flax you have to process to make a 28 cubit by 4 cubit 10 of these. And I don't even want to know how long it takes to make the curtain out of it, because I tell you, my daughter is crocheting from morning till night, it seems like, and she's got about this much blanket done. This is a tremendous thing that they're being asked to do. The width of each curtain of 4 cubits, all the curtains shall have the same measurements. Again, pretty difficult, right? When we were little, my aunt knitted us all stockings. They were all supposed to be exactly the same size. You know what they're not? Not exactly the same size. They're not. They're a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. It's hard to do. 5 curtains shall be joined to one another, and other 5 curtains shall be joined to one another. You shall make loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set, and likewise you shall make them on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the second set. You shall make 50 loops in the one curtain, and you shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite each other. You shall make 50 clasps of gold and join the curtain to one another with the clasp so that the tabernacle will be a unit. That's important, how it's connected, the joinery that is involved. There have been occasional times many fewer people are renting out bounce houses here lately because they were required to buy insurance by the state of Texas in order to do it, and nobody could get insurance. Because bounce houses tend to deflate on people, and when they have 30 kids in them, and they fall in on each other, on itself, because the fan burns out or whatever. Can you imagine the weight of 10 curtains and the acacia wood poles falling in on whoever was inside the tabernacle? It's got to be structurally sound, be held together properly. We could talk about the original anchors that were put in this red iron, couldn't we, Bill? And the building outside here originally. The concrete wasn't poured properly. And the anchors were basically for a swing set, I think, from Lowe's. That doesn't bode well for red iron building of this size. So God's making sure that it is safe, actually. Shall make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. You shall make 11 curtains in all. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. The 11 curtains shall have the same measurements. You shall join 5 curtains by themselves and the other 6 curtains by themselves, and you shall double over the 6th curtain at the front of the tent. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the first set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the second set. You shall make 50 clasps of bronze, and you shall put the clasps into the loops and join the tent together so that it will be a unit. The overlapping part that is left over in the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that is left over, shall lap over the back of the tabernacle. The cubit on one side and the cubit on the other of what is left over in the length of the curtain of the tent shall lap over the sides of the tabernacle on one side and on the other to cover it. And you shall make a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering of porpoise skins above. So take all of that leather for a covering. My sons and I, well, at least I think Isaac and I don't know if you guys watched it. There's a YouTube channel called Townsend's. I don't know if you've ever watched it. It's a guy that goes in, he's a reenactment and recreation specialist. And they built a small log cabin complete with a stick and wattle chimney and fireplace. And they're in the Northeast, and so their season, it's not like us where they have sunshine and no rain for 10 months a year or something, you know, they build it. But they spent most of the summer sending the children out with these tools that would not pass modern sensibilities for children to be using, and they had them strip birch off of all these logs. There's like a 2 or 3 week period where you can strip a birch log and get all of its bark off in one piece. There's a very small window that you can do this, and that's what they stuck on the roof of the cabin because they didn't have time to make all the shakes for doing a wood shingle roof, which would have been the permanent roof. And they put all these long, 16 feet long by maybe 3 feet wide pieces of bark on the roof. And about halfway through the winter, they were all shrunk up and crackly. And there was no part of the roof that wasn't just basically a funnel for water to come in. And so the roof is pretty important, in other words. This is a high dollar roof. People get kind of grossed out when I talk about processing animals, but a ram isn't that big. You got to sew a bunch of ram skins together after dyeing them all red. This is a lot of skins and a lot of porpoise skins. I don't even know. I've never skinned a porpoise. Mea culpa. I have no idea what to tell you how many porpoise skins it would take to cover this thing. I'm sorry I failed you. But I've certainly never made leather out of a porpoise skin. And it is a lot of work doing. But you need to understand that this tabernacle stood for a long, long time. It was not replaced until the Golden Age. Solomon replaced this thing. They were using the tabernacle as the temple in Jerusalem for centuries. I don't even know how many centuries that is. My biblical timeline is long. I have probably bought 40 pop-up tents in my life as a parent, because who doesn't want their kid to go camp out in the backyard? Have you bought some of these $15 pup tents, Tim? Well, you put them out in the backyard, they last about 4.5 hours. And then they blow away or get run over by the dog, or the kids get the zippers totally screwed up. You can never close them ever again. They never shed water. Those things don't last. This thing is supposed to last. It's a tabernacle, it's a tent, but it's not like those tents. They were using this as a worship center far, far beyond. I mean, I think they're still selling military Quonset hut surplus from World War II in certain places that you can take apart and move, and it's nowhere close to that. This is a tremendous structure. We used to have, I don't know what happened to it. We used to have actually a model of the temple compound running around El Paso Bible Church. I'm not sure if it survived. But you can get the idea for what the compound looks like from that, because the temple followed the same basic pattern. Boards and sockets. Y'all like these building directions? Everybody likes expository teaching verse by verse when we're in Ephesians. Get into Exodus, people start getting a little bit tired. It's okay. Priscilla and I took Old Testament survey in 7th grade. Pastor Joe Saul. You think it's tough for you now? Try being 12 or 13 and having to read through Leviticus and Exodus all the way through the whole Old Testament, 7th grade in 1 year. That is what we did. And it was important to do that, as a matter of fact. Verse 15, then you shall make the boards for the tabernacle of acacia wood standing upright. 10 cubits shall be the length of each board, and 1.5 cubits the width of each board. There shall be 2 tenons for each board, fitted to one another. Thus you shall do for all the boards of the tabernacle. You shall make the boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the south side. You shall make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under one board for its 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for its 2 tenons. If you go onto YouTube, which I do a lot, and maybe you should too, and you look up timber framing techniques, the first probably 10 videos you'll come up with have a robot arm on them, and the logs and the timbers, and they, again, type in like it's a 3D printer. And it shoots out a little laser, and it carves the sockets and the mortises and the tenons. What you need to do is you ought to go and watch on Prime, Amazon Prime. Everybody, oh wait, y'all are real Christians? You don't have Amazon Prime? You've boycotted it, right? Everybody's boycott. I'm not a boycotting person. I don't boycott things, generally speaking. But on Amazon Prime, you can watch a BBC show about, again, some historians that are going, and they go and they recreate things. They build a castle. Several of them, they become farmers in every era from World War II back to medieval England. And one of them is a woodworker. This is why I watch it. I don't really care how they took care of pigs 1,000 years ago. But I am interested in how they make trees into boards 1,000 years ago, because I know how I do it. I know how I would do it, and I know that they couldn't have done that. And so they take wedges, wooden wedges, and big hammers or logs, mallets, and they literally just drive the wedges into the log, into a green log, and split it. And then they take either an adze or a plane by hand and take each board. and smooth out. And that's just to get a usable board, usable material. It takes days and days and days and days to take a significant sized log and make a board out of it. So I just read this and I am amazed at what is required. The sockets, the tenons, the mortise and tenons. Have you ever tried to cut a mortise and tenon? Anybody? In wood? The type of furniture that I make, generally for ourselves, because it lasts centuries, which is what is required to survive 5 suns. It has to be able to survive centuries of normal, average human use in order to survive a house with 5 suns in it. That's just been my estimation. Is mission-style furniture. And one of the characteristics of mission-style furniture is exposed tenons, through tenons. And so you can see the joinery. You can see the mortise and tenons for the life of the piece, the life of the furniture, which requires that they be pretty exact. They have to be pretty correct. And it's not right. Oh, are we over time? I had glare on the clock. Tammy's like, please stop. Please stop. Okay. It's harder than it looks. We'll stop there and we'll talk about that a little bit more next time. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your word. We thank you for these explicit directions for your sanctuary, Father, that you did not allow people to build you something that you were going to use to dwell in that did not meet your standards. And we thank you for that truth as well. In your son's name we pray. Amen. You know, Tammy, I've been looking